Hello, hello. But everyone is having a great time listening to these chapters. Um, we are going to read chapter 12 of Terrible Typhoid Mary by Susan Campbell Bartoletti. So far, we have listened and read 11 of the 15. It's great. I think that this book is fantastic. It definitely highlights the changes that we have gone through as a nation in regards to the medical world, um, and how different people's rights are treated when it comes to health and things like that. Um, but I'm definitely excited to continue reading, so we are going to read chapter 12. It is in which Mary Mallon has her day in court. Remember, in the last chapter, at the very end, she found a newspaper that released who she really was. It actually had her full name. It didn't have just Mary or a fake last name or whatever. It was her real information. So that's where we are in the book. Typhoid Mary, most harmless and yet most dangerous woman in America. The extraordinary predicament of Mary Mallon, a prisoner on New York's quarantine hospital island, not because she is sick, but because she breathes typhoid fever germs and scatters them wherever she goes. Mary stared at the pages. A large illustration depicted her wearing an apron and cracking skull-like typhoid bacteria into a frying pan. A photograph showed her laying in a hospital bed. Another showed her sitting in an outdoor pavilion with other patients. Across the banner headline marched the silhouettes of her victims. One of William Randolph Hearst's reporters had broken the story. For the first time, Mary Mallon's full identity was revealed in the New York American, and the Sunday morning edition boasted a circulation of nearly 800,000. This meant that nearly 800,000 people or more knew Mary's name. The double-page spread included the paper that George Soper had presented before the Biological Society of Washington, D.C., but the New York American retitled it The Extraordinary Trail of Death and Disease Left by Mary Mallon. Dr. William Hollock Park wrote an accompanying untitled article in which he said, "Every effort has been made to cure the unfortunate woman, but so far without success." He added that it was the plain duty of the health authorities to safeguard the public from such a menace. He predicted that Mary would be a prisoner for a very long time, possibly for life. The reporter agreed. "It is probable that Mary Mallon is a prisoner for life," he wrote in the opening paragraph. Then, more sympathetically, he added, "and yet she has committed no crime, has never been accused of an immoral or wicked act, and has never been a prisoner in any court, nor has she been sentenced to imprisonment by any judge." In Mary's letter to the editor of the New York American, she revealed her resentment for the way she was treated. "I have been, in fact, a peep show for everybody. Even the interns had to come see me and ask about the facts already known to the whole wide world. The tuberculosis men would say, 'There she is, the kidnapped woman.'" She also revealed her bitter resentment for the way such men as Soper and Park were talking about her. "I wonder how the said Dr. William H. Park would like to be insulted and put in the journal and call him or his wife Typhoid William Park." Her letter was never published. One of the New York American readers was a 34-year-old attorney named George Francis O'Neill. He called the circumstances that led to her imprisonment absurd. Aghast at the clear violation of her civil rights, he offered to represent Mary Mallon. To this day, no one knows exactly how she paid for George O'Neill's legal services. There is no evidence that he offered them for free. Some believe that publisher William Randolph Hearst himself paid the attorney. Hearst was known as an advocate for the working man and the underdog. His sensational newspaper often railed against social injustice. Perhaps paying Mary's legal fees would be a good way to get the exclusive rights to her story. This would not be considered ethical today. But the New York American itself credited several wealthy New Yorkers for paying Mary's legal fees. They were moved by pity for the lone woman who has not a relative or a friend to whom she can turn, wrote the reporter. George Francis O'Neill intended to give Mary Mallon her day in court, a right protected by the Sixth Amendment. I'm running out of air. She had the right to an attorney. She had the right to a speedy trial and an impartial jury. She had the right to be confronted with the witnesses against her. She had the right to obtain her own witnesses. These rights are part of the due process that are protected in the Fifth Amendment. But first, O'Neill had to force the health department to show in court why Mary was imprisoned. He headed to the New York State Supreme Court and filed a legal complaint known as a writ of habeas corpus, which requires a prison official to show why any prisoner is held. At long last, Mary Mallon would have her day in court. 9 days after the story broke, more than 2 years and 4 months after the ambulance had carted Mary to Willard Parker Hospital, she boarded the hospital ferry that carried her to 16th Street in Manhattan. With her attorney, she headed to the New York Supreme Court at 52 Chambers Street in Lower Manhattan. In her dress pocket, she carried folded pages torn from the Sunday Morning New York American. The courtroom reporters were impressed with Mary Mallon's appearance and good health. No stranger who saw Mary yesterday would have suspected the danger the health board alleges it finds in this young woman, wrote the New York American reporter. She has a clear, healthy complexion, regular features, bright eyes, and white teeth. She looks to be in robust health. Another reporter described Mary appearing as rosy as you please. He remarked on her strength, saying she looked as though she could make a valid resistance, as she did when she was arrested. Reporters also urged language that connotated a witch or a sorceress. They described Mary as a woman who had strange power and who possessed the power to infect others. She was one of the few freaks of the kind who made all ill who came in contact with her. An illustration showed an aproned Mary as a deadly cook stirring a boiling pot. Skulls rose from the steam. The proceedings began. George Francis O'Neill stood before Justice Mitchell Erlanger and Leonard Griegerich. He claimed that no law justified Mary's arrest and imprisonment. Furthermore, O'Neill argued that her right to due process had been abridged. The health department had no right to arrest Mary, lock her in a hospital room, and then take specimens without her consent. Since Mary had no visible signs of illness, O'Neill argued that the health department had a right to examine Mary first and then take her, not take her and then examine her. At last, Mary had someone on her side. "I am an innocent human being," she told the court. "I have committed no crime, and I am treated like an outcast, a criminal. It is unjust, outrageous, and uncivilized. It seems incredible that in a Christian community a defenseless woman can be treated in this manner." Attorney O'Neill argued that the health department could not legally continue to hold Mary. "If the mere statement that a person is infected with germs is sufficient," he said, "then that person can be taken away from his or her home and family and locked up and imprisoned for life on North Brothers Island. This is what happened in this case." His argument raised questions. How much power should a doctor have? How much power should a laboratory test have? Should the word of a medical doctor be sufficient to quarantine a person for life? should the results of a laboratory test carry that much weight? Mary Mallon is in perfect physical condition, O'Neill told the judges. She has never been obliged to receive the care and attention of a physician or a surgeon. In 1907, the year of Mary's arrest, 4,426 new cases of typhoid fever had been reported. Only 2 cases were traced back to a household where Mary happened to work. As far as O'Neill was concerned, the evidence against Mary was circumstantial. This woman has been a victim of unfortunate circumstances and having been employed in houses where typhoid broke out. He said, the disease having been unquestionably the result of conditions in which she had nothing to do with. By the time of Mary's court hearings in June 1909, the health department had identified 5 healthy carriers in New York City. So now she's not alone. She's not the only one anymore. And they knew for certain that there were more on the loose in the city. Nationwide, 50 carriers had been identified, but Mary was the only one quarantined. O'Neill jumped on this point. If other healthy carriers were loose in the city, if the law couldn't be applied equally and without bias, another protection under the 14th Amendment, then why single out Mary Mallon? Speaking for Riverside Hospital, Dr. Frederick Westmoreland explained that Mary was singled out for one reason, her occupation as a cook. He said, the Department of Health concluded that the patient would be a dangerous person and a constant menace to the public health to be at large. The health department did not broker a deal. Officials did not offer Mary the opportunity to learn a new trade. They didn't offer her the opportunity to learn how to not infect others. Instead, the officials argued that they had the right to hold her because they had an obligation to protect the public's health. They submitted their laboratory tests as proof that she was a dangerous carrier. O'Neill presented Mary's results from Ferguson's laboratories, which contradicted the health department's test results. The court would have to decide which reports to accept, or whether to accept the laboratory reports at all. In a sense, the new science of bacteriology was also on trial. The court proceedings lasted 3 hours. It's interesting to note that no witnesses testified against Mary, not even the members of the Walter Brown family whose daughter had died. After the court adjourned, Mary returned to her bungalow on North Brother Island to await the judge's decision. She may have known that her case was a long shot. She had already experienced the long, powerful arm of the New York City Department of Health. Yet the health department admitted it was impractical and expensive to quarantine every carrier. Where would we put them all? Walter Bensel posed to a New York Tribune reporter. Mallon is taking up valuable space in the Riverside Hospital and has caused us plenty of trouble and expense. Her hopes may also have been bolstered by this admission and by sympathetic stories and editorials that appeared in newspapers over the coming days. Not everyone believed that she should be quarantined. Some medical professionals called it unfair and suggested that she should be retrained in a new occupation. A writer who called himself New Thought Student mocked the city's concern with Mary. Why not send her other companions? Start a colony on some unpleasant island. Call it Uncle Sam's Suspects. There collect measles Sammy, tonsillitis Joseph, scarlet fever Sally, mumps Matilda, and meningitis Matthew. Add typhoid Mary. Request the sterilized prayer of all regional religionized germ fanatics, and then leave the United States to enjoy the glorious freedom of the American flag under a medical monarchy. Another interesting proposal came from a Michigan farmer. In a letter to Dr. Darlington, 28-year-old Reuben Gray wrote, "If Miss Mallon is not over 10 years older and has nothing other than what you have found to bar her from the society of the world, and you will pardon her and get her into Michigan and see what the authorities of Michigan are not wise that she is here, she will agree to become my wife, and I will agree to become her husband." Yeah, okay. But there was a caveat. One thing she should be made aware of before the tie is bound, and that is that I have been insane, said Gray. But it was over 3 years ago, and I was pronounced cured then, and I've never had the return of the disease. Mary did not agree to become Reuben Gray's wife. 3 weeks later, on July 16th, Mary had her answer. The court dismissed her writ of habeas corpus. Her detention on North Brother Island was not illegal. The court had decided. She would remain in the custody of the Board of Health of the City of New York. The court explained the decision. While the court deeply sympathizes with this unfortunate woman, said Justice Mitchell Erlinger, it must protect the community against the recurrence of spreading the disease. It was a terrible blow for Mary. Why were some healthy carriers allowed to roam free and she was not? She told a New York World reporter that there were two kinds of justice in America, and that she had not been given the benefit of the reasonable doubt which is allowed even to murderers. All the water in the oceans wouldn't clear me from this change. All the water in the oceans wouldn't clear me from this charge in the eyes of the health department, said Mary. They want to make a showing. They want to get credit for protecting the rich, and I am the victim. But she wasn't about to give up. As there is a God in heaven, she vowed to the reporter, I will get justice somehow, sometime. For now, it seemed that the hard-working cook was destined to live out her life in quarantine on North Brother Island. So, she got to go to court, but it did not work in her favor. They still agreed with the health department, which still blows my mind, because if there's 5 other healthy carriers, why is she the only one? They said it's because she had the occupation of a cook. But then they didn't say, well, give her the chance to learn a new trade or make a living in a different way or whatever the case may be. The other people that are healthy carriers can still go out and live their lives. They don't have to be quarantined, but she does. So, it said that it was a blow. It was a tough blow. That would be pretty hard to swallow and take in if you were the only one that had to be kept and quarantined and you knew that there were other people out there like you. That would be tough. Let's see what happens next. See ya. Bye.